can be an atheist. He cannot hope to solve the people's problems unless in his own heart he has blended the intellect and the spiritual faculties of the human constitution. The leader must therefore be enlightened, and an enlightened leader is one above any action which is not honorable. The leader responsibility is heavy, and instead of using leadership as a symbol of opportunity to exploit, really leadership is the privilege of service. It is the privilege of doing things for other people to make life better for them and for the world in which they live. The unselfish leadership is the highest aspect, and therefore becomes the sixth level of the cycle. And then comes the last, Saturn. And Saturn was the ancient father who devoured all his own sons. It was a very interesting legendary behind Saturn. Saturn is a symbol of a very deep composure. Saturn is the final statement of a maturity blending inside spiritual enlightenment with material adjustments. Saturn is therefore the symbol of that balance which, when achieved, makes the individual almost indestructible. Saturn is that which has no longer any breakage with law. It has no longer any conflict with realities. Therefore, in the more common feelings of astrology, Saturn is the bestower of long life. This means simply that it has reached the point where it does not cause short life to itself. It has kept the rule. It has made the dedications. It has the profound attitudes and yet the simplicity and directness of revelation. So Saturn represents the truly wise person, the philosophic elect, the sage, the person who has lived the life and has now become the teacher of others. It is the religious symbol of leadership. It is the power to become the good shepherd and carry forward the labors of sharing wisdom. It is from the Saturn level that the great leaders of peoples should be chosen. Leaders who would be incapable of leading a people into war. A leader that would be incapable of permitting discord and dissension of an unreasonable nature from arising within his empire. So that the one who would be the greatest among us must be the servant of all, and that is the position of Saturn. All greatness is service. All elevation is for the service of those who must obey the laws of leadership. So there can be no mistake, no fallacies, no corruptions possible in this pattern of things. Now, if the individual has followed this line through, he then comes, as the Egyptian mystery shows, and the Eleusinian and the Bacchic and Osirian mysteries, he comes into the presence of the Great One. In this sense, in Egypt, we follow very closely the story in the Apocalypse of John. For we come to the great figure walking among the candlesticks, carrying the stars. This is a symbol of that which is above these limitations. This is a release in which the individual, having step by step overcome the impediments which he has placed upon himself or has permitted to society to place upon him through wrong education and wrong laws, that the individual comes into the presence of Osiris in Egypt and comes into the presence of the Lord with the stars and the candlesticks. And in every religion there is some, whether it is Shangti in China or whether it is Mahavarakana in Buddhist Japan, all of these symbols represent coming face to face with the truth, coming face to face with the thing that is as it is. I am that I am. And this tremendous experience was represented in the mysteries by the psychostatia, or the weighing of the soul. Here it was that, having passed all tests and obligations, having fulfilled the discipleships of the mystery rites, having learned all that was possible to be taught by illumined and initiated teachers, the individual comes straight into the presence of that which is his own destiny. Now, if this occurs and the individual reaches the highest degree of initiation physically, he becomes an arhat, or a lohan, or an adept in the terminology of different religions. He then becomes one who knows. Now, as one who knows, the very fact of knowledge brings with it the first great burden that knowledge must bear. But now that he knows, he must give and share knowledge. He must go forth in the name of knowledge and in the name of service to become a depending force in the development of other people. He must become a part of the hierarchy, or the order of leadership, which is behind the administration of universal law on the physical plane. Because the laws themselves are not physical. It is only an individual who has transcended the physical in his own life and has become the arhat, who is capable of interpreting something above the physical for the needs of those who are still bound by the physical. Again, it is a problem of proper instruction, and the adept, having received that instruction, is capable of sharing it. So little by little, the journey upward brings the creation to the adoration of the creating power. It stands in the presence of the infinite, and in this standing forth in its eternity, the creation, from the smallest to the greatest part, from the smallest gnat in the sunbeam to the vastest of all universal systems. All these things are parts of the unfoldment of one tremendous principle. And this principle is the gradual unfoldment of the infinite through the finite, and the gradual victory of the infinite over the finite, and the final union again of the finite and the infinite in an eternal bond of identity. All of this makes a very interesting and illuminating series of discoveries, which we have to make as we can, little by little. But the Buddha said on one occasion that the longest journey begins with a single step. And this is more or less the problem that we face. We are all of us on this journey, whether we know it or not. And we are going to be unhappy on the journey until we learn that it's the journey that can make us happy. But we have to make the first step. We have to make a dedication. We have to indicate bringing a burnt offering to the altar of the Lord, as described in the tabernacle rites. We must bring a gift to the altar as a proof of sincerity. And the only gift that anyone can really give is himself. We have to therefore sacrifice the self-rulership in order to come under the heading of divine rulership. Now, self-rulership for most people is rulership by the ego, by the personal self, by the individuality, by one of the lesser powers of life. But when we lift this rulership from the personal equation, when we no longer say, I want this and I will do that, and we gradually find out the truth of these things, we then realize that this leadership is always vested finally in the pious part of our own natures. Now, as the various elements of the pattern of the 7 steps have unfolded in ourselves, we finally shift the leadership of our lives from the mind, from the ego, to the divine principle abiding always within ourselves. For just as surely as a supreme power fashions all things, so the spark of that supreme power has fashioned us and is finally the ruler of our lives. Therefore, the initiate ascending always finds in the end communion with the innermost, communion with that which is the divine within himself or herself, the rulership of that which was the source and cause, and the only answer to all the questions of life. There is only one reality in each of us, and that is the divine power.